Good morning, friends. My name is Yuri Bisarab, and I will speak to you on post-psychological autodidactics of Valery Kourinskiy. Today, I would like to touch the issue which is very important for autodidacts. And Kourinskiy once, several times, I heard from him that he said that an autodidact without introspection is nonsense. So this is exactly the topic I would like to discuss for you. Introspection. But we cannot speak about introspection if we not look at key principles of post-psychology. The first of them is that a human has a dual nature. What does it mean for us? That first of all we have body, and this body is very identical to many bodies that animals have. But there is something in the body which allows us to observe what is happening with us. And that something is placed within the soul. I just share my experience and my observations with you. And within the soul, with the soul we feel. And also within the soul we have this body, this organ which allows us to observe what is happening in fact in the body, in the soul, and also what is happening in a very important instrument for us, that is in our imagination. And what kind of body or what kind of organ is that? It's very difficult to answer to this question. And I decided to experiment and to suggest to myself and also to other autodidacts to consider that this, let's say, organ of observation is like a microchip, like a motherboard. And also later on I added a video camera just to give it the function of observing us. Later on, I decided to use an experiment to experiment a little bit and to consider this body or this organ, that it is some kind of like a little stick in the violin, which is called little soul, and it's like it's inside of a violin, and without it, the violin doesn't sound. So I experimented also with that image. Also, this organ has a nature very close to nature to a snitch in Harry Potter. You remember the little ball Harry Potter had to catch. So it has the nature like that. It's like appears and disappears, but it appears when we stop and start thinking about this, and it allows us also to choose what we imagine or what kind of images we use in our imagination. We came to a very important point, because imagination is something, in my opinion, it's also a part of our soul, which can be called an instrument, or an instrument also not only of the soul but also of thinking. And thinking also, it's also a process within the soul. And just for experiment, for example, try to think about something without imagination. It's impossible. That's why this body, this organ or this instrument is extremely important for us. But look, now in post-psychology we have also something, this organ which allows us, this observer, or an organ observer, which allows us to observe what is happening in imagination, which means that we can control, that we are in control what is happening within our imagination, because everything which is happening has influence on us. Recent developments in science, very often they speak about such a thing like microbiome, but it's mostly they speak about our stomach. And they say that there are a lot of cultures of microbes that are in our body, that are in our stomach, and depending on what we consume, they develop or not develop, and they have impact on our health. I suggest also to use this term or this idea of microbiome, but for imagination. Just imagine our imagination as some kind of reservoir, right? Some kind of a little tank or something like that, like a little pot, maybe, but flexible, right? And also it is covered from inside with these cultures of different microbes. And that will allow us to understand better that everything that we imagine, everything we think, which is a synonym of imagine, everything has impact on those microcultures or cultures or microbes that we have in our, let's say, soul, in our thinking, in our brain, if you want me to be more physical, or yeah, like that. I use the term soul because it allows me to be more philosophical than scientific, because for scientific reasons I would call it psyche. And but look, now we can with these instruments, imagination, and those also this observer, we finally can come to the techniques of introspection. I would suggest the first, or I can say that Kourinskiy suggested several, about 16 or 15, and today we'll consider only 3 of those techniques. The first technique of introspection is like observing ourselves. This is a very interesting, and also to try to observe ourselves as a little bit from outside or from a side. I understand that maybe there is no reason to go too far away, but just to try to imagine that we observe ourselves, or realize that we observe ourselves from within ourselves. It's even then we have a chance to see what is happening in us. With this technique, it's very important that we don't interfere in what is happening in our imagination and, of course, in our soul. We just observe. We don't criticize, we don't say yes, it's good or it's not. We will do it later, a little bit later. After this, let's say, short session of observation, of introspection, then we can criticize or not criticize, or we can think what we really saw in our imagination. And here there will be a lot of food for thinking of those people who will start using this technique. The second technique is like combining ourselves with ideal I, or every one of us has some kind of an ideal person, or what we would like ideally to have. Just imagine that ideal ourselves, or ideal yourself, and a person but who has all additional skills that you would like to have, including your vocation, including some other skills that are very necessary for you. And just imagine that you combine with that person, that you are in the state of that person. It's like layers. You remember layers in Photoshop? Just imagine you put that layer in and you combine the layer of yourself with that layer of ideal person, ideal yourself. When you achieve that state, try to look around and answer to the question, what would you like to do when you have all those skills that you would like ideally to have? It's very important to answer this question. Maybe in the comments you can share your experience of this of using this technique of introspection. Method 3, or technique number 3. It's when we take a very complicated task and we are trying to solve this in our imagination, and at the same time we observe what is happening, or what kind of techniques, what tools we are trying to use in order to come to a possible solution of a complicated task, of a different task for us. We can experiment with lots of tasks. And also we need to remember that in reality everything will be a little bit different because the reality of itself. But when we practice this technique of introspection, of how we solve different tasks, then later on during our life we will have real methods or real algorithm of how to solve those tasks when we are facing them. With this, this is the end, and if you like it, put likes and share this program with others, and until the next program, bye bye.